Historically, Black Caiman were hunted almost to extinction in Latin America for their skin and also out of fear, but they have recently been made a protected species and they are slowly starting to make a recovery in South and Central America. You can go and see them, but even so, it's always wise to go looking for them with people who know how to handle them. And here is their range. Now, the next reptile I'm going to show you is my second favourite snake of all. It is the Yellow-Tailed Cribo. Now, the Yellow-Tailed Cribo is quite a big snake. In fact, it can grow to be about 6.5 or even 7 metres in length. And of course, it gets its name from the beautiful golden yellow tail. And of course, quite often when you're handling a Yellow-Tailed Cribo, because the scales are almost like it's made of silk, because you just can't grip it. It keeps slipping through your fingers. And of course, these animals are basically the snake equivalent of a Terminator. And one of the main reasons for that is that they hunt all kinds of things. They will hunt lizards, frogs, birds, mammals, hard-shelled tortoises, and even, incredibly, other snakes. And that can be some of the biggest and venomous in all of Latin America. That includes things like the bushmaster, the fer-de-lance, the coral snake, rattlesnakes, and even boa constrictors and anacondas aren't safe from this snake. How it kills them is not through venom or constriction, it's purely through the strongest bite of any snake. In fact, the muscles behind the jaw muscles of this snake are in fact the largest of any snake. And what it does is it will grab a hold of prey and thrash around, whacking it against nearby tree trunks, roots or rocks until it either kills it or knocks it senseless, and it then swallows prey whole and quite often alive. Now, this snake is of no danger to us as humans, but for anything else that gets in its path, be even other venomous snakes, it is the death of the forest floor. Here is its range. Now, the next reptile I'm going to show you all is another crocodilian. It is the American crocodile. Now, American crocodiles are found in the uprivers and along the coastlines of Latin America, which include South and Central America, and as well as Mexico and some of the southern parts of the United States. A fully grown male can be as long as a minibus and weigh as much as a small car. And unlike most crocodiles, they have a very long and short snout. And that's mainly down to the fact that this crocodile is primarily a fish feeder, so its main diet is fish, but it will also hunt crustaceans like crayfish, as well as lizards, frogs, insects, large mammals like deer, but every once in a while, big American crocodiles have been known to take people, so these are confirmed man-eaters. Of course, these crocodiles live in both freshwater lakes and rivers, and of course estuaries and the sea. In fact, they can cry out saltwater tears, and they have special glands inside their mouths to remove sea salt from their systems. So basically, sweet water or salty, nowhere is safe. And just like with the Black Caiman and other crocodilians, they have their eyes shine as bright ruby red, but they also have well-developed senses of hearing and smell and sensors along their jaws that can detect vibrations of struggling prey in the water. And like all crocodilians, they can stay underwater for well over 3 hours, and they have been around on the planet since long before the dinosaurs. And of course, here is their range. Now, the next reptile of the Americas I'm going to show you is the largest freshwater turtle, and one that has probably the most powerful jaws of any crab animal. It is the Alligator Snapping Turtle. Now, this is the largest freshwater turtle in the world. It lives in the rivers and swamps of southeastern USA. And of course, a fully grown male can be probably up to 3 meters long and can weigh about 110 pounds or so, a lot stronger than me. And they have, of course, in their mouth, well, they don't really need teeth, but of course they have some of the most scalpel-sharp jaws in the animal kingdom. And of course, their hooked snout is scalpel-sharp, and they use that to chomp through anything and everything. Flesh, sinew, gristle, and even bone. And of course, the alligator snapping turtle spends much of its time submerged, looking just like a log. Because looking at the shape of the head and the body and the shell, it's very, very irregular. The colour's very dark, and they blend in really, really well with all of the vegetation that's at the bottom of the water. So what they do, but they have a very clever trick that allows them to get their food to come to them. That's just there on the inside of their, right on the edge of their tongue is a fleshy growth that they can wriggle around like a worm. So this little fishy thinks he's just about to have his lunch, when in fact he's actually about to become lunch, because as soon as either a fish, a frog, or a lizard, or a bird gets too close, the head snaps out, the jaws will clamp shut incredibly quickly, and their prey is history. Of course, whenever you're handling alligator snapping turtles, you always have to keep your hands as far away from the head as you can, and that's because that when it strikes, the head really extends forward from the front of the shell a good distance. Of course, with a smaller alligator snapping turtle, I guess I'd only be in danger of losing a couple of fingers. But I think it's fairly safe to say that if my hand or even my arm were to get too close to the jaws of that big fella, I would probably end up losing them. Of course, it's always wise to, of course, as you can see right here, you always need to, when you're handling them, get your hands right behind the head, and then you can grip the shell and lift them up like that. But of course, this is an animal that is probably capable of crushing my arm to pulp. It is something I definitely do not want to get bitten by. And here is their range. Now, I'm going to move on to Asia. Now, Asia is the largest continent in the world, but it also has its fair share of reptiles. The first one is this. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Dragons are not just the stuff of myths and legends. In fact, I give you a real-life, bone-crushing, flesh-tearing beast from a land that time forgot. It is the Komodo Dragon. Now, this animal is the largest lizard on the planet. A fully grown male can grow to be well over 3 meters long and be 2 times heavier than me. In fact, these giant lizards evolved in Australia, where their even bigger ancestors developed venom to take out megafauna, big animals. But those monsters are extinct, but the Komodo dragon lives. And just like monitor lizards, Komodo dragons have a forked tongue, but also they do have venom that they use to bring down their prey. And of course, they live on the remote islands of Indonesia that make up the Komodo National Park. In fact, they live in the mountains, the caves, the forests, the grasslands of the islands, and they can also swim in between the rough seas of the islands. And of course, they usually hang around water holes and they've even been known to hang around the ranger stations to pick up scraps. And of course, these animals prey on all kinds of things. In fact, they will scavenge on carrion, but they will also eat small lizards, frogs, pigs, boars, and even, of course, Timor deer and Samba deer. And of course, they will occasionally eat young Komodo dragons, which is a sign of cannibalism. But the biggest animal they will hunt is water buffalo. Of course, people often find it remarkable that a lizard will take on and kill an animal as big as a water buffalo. I mean, it is an immensely powerful beast. I mean, it's big, it's bulky, and it has the broadest horns of any cow. And of course, Komodo dragons don't try and overpower their victim like a pride of lions. Instead, all they have to do is they have to bite the animal, then they release their venom into the animal, and then they just release it and wait for it to die. Of course, Komodo dragons have 60 teeth that are as sharp as a surgical scalpel, and all attached to a venom gland inside their heads. And also, they have a surprisingly strong bite force for a monitor lizard. And of course, the Komodo dragon's venom affects the blood cells and the blood pressure. It causes a decrease in blood pressure and stops a wound from healing, and can cause the animal to bleed to death. And it may take hours or even days for a buffalo to die. And of course, it's not just venom in the Komodo dragon's mouth, but it also uses bacteria to cause blood poisoning. Of course, it may take hours or even days for its prey to die, but all the dragon has to do is follow and wait. And of course, Komodo dragons have, on occasion, targeted, hunted, and even killed humans, but a lot of the time that's if they're incredibly hungry or if they smell blood. But of course, a couple of friends of mine have been to the Komodo National Park in Indonesia, and of course, being as it's a national park, you're obviously not allowed to carry guns or anything that will harm the dragons, but you do need to defend yourself, so you're each given a large stick with a Y shape on top. And when I asked him what use is that against a giant 3-metre long venomous lizard, he said, at first I didn't know, but it's better than anything. It keeps as much distance between you and the Komodo dragon's mouth. And another thing about another rule, and this only applies to the women, is that if it's your time of the month, you can't go anywhere near the dragons, because if they smell blood, they switch to predatory mode, and then you will be in danger. And of course, here are the islands that they are found on. Now, the next reptile is the largest venomous snake in the world. It is the King Cobra. Now, the King Cobra is the largest venomous snake on the planet. A fully grown male can grow to be up to 7 to 8 metres in length, which is as long as a lorry, can be as thick around as my wrist, and they have probably the most advanced vision and sense of smell of any snake. In fact, they can actually rear up and look me right in the eye, and they have venom that's strong enough to theoretically bring down an elephant.